Welcome back to episode 2. Glad you could join me today. I wanted to start off with a couple readings and discuss them. So let's see here. First one I'd like to do is March 8th. This is from Touchstones. Before the rain stops, we hear a bird. Even under the heavy snow, we see snowdrops and some new growth. The signals that new growth is underway are often very small at first. It's sometimes discouraging when we are trying to remake our lives, and all we can see for our efforts is minor growth. That is how the natural world works, and we are part of this world. When the little sprouts of growth first develop under the snow in spring, we don't even see them unless we search. Yet they signal the beginnings of a total transformation. Time will bring vast changes, but only little signs are showing first. Today, we may search for signs of progress in our lives. The little things we see may signal bigger transformations yet to come. To be true to them in the long run, we must accept them, even welcome them, as they are today. I will notice the subtle movements towards health and renewal in my life. Welcoming them will encourage them. I read this passage in my men's meeting on Saturday, and man, it really, really spoke to me. Spring is upon us. It's 60 degrees outside currently, and even though we had 9 inches of snow last week, today we can see that promise of spring coming. And I really liked this reading because it talks about those little sprouts underneath the snow that we may not see. They're still there. They're still growing, but we may not notice them at first. We need those layers of snow to melt away, and we need that growth to continue and strengthen before it emerges and pops through, and then it's noticeable. I've talked a number of times in my meetings about the instant gratification that drinking gave. And nowadays, being sober can be hard to find that instant gratification. I remember going out with buddies at the bar and partying and meeting tourists and raging all night and having that feeling, that high that the drink gave you. Nowadays, we get that from other sources, and it's not the instant gratification that we used to have. It's more of an honest, long-term, gradual type gratification. That's been hard for me at times to deal with because I've spent so much of my life looking for that instant gratification, looking for that instant high. And now to think as an adult, doing the next right thing or being the responsible one or just following the right path doesn't necessarily give you those immediate results that we used to get. It's more of those long-term, sometimes hidden results. But those results are the honest ones. The results we get today are the clean and pure ones. So it's been a little difficult for me to come to terms with that, but this is a great reminder of how, through sobriety, that growth is there, even though it's not always recognizable. That was a good reading, and I'd like to read one more real quick before we get rolling. Here we go. There is no king who has not had a slave among his ancestors, and no slave who has not had a king among his. Helen Keller. The human race is a huge mixture of dignity and degradation, and every man inherits the blend. We can respect the slave in us for his endurance and suffering, and the king in us earns our respect for his leadership and justice. Are we ashamed of who we are or where we have come from? Then we may have to look deeper and ask if we are really different from any other man. Do we believe we must conform to some mold of acceptability, some proper appearance? Are we so focused on the surface that we miss the deeper values of our humanness? Sometimes we take on a reverse smugness and become judgmental of a person who looks successful or speaks well. We think, I can't like him. He is in a different class. We all need acceptance and respect, and in this program, we are equals from the first day. God, grant me the self-esteem to accept the whole mixture that comes together in me and in the people around me. Do we believe we must conform to some mold of acceptability, some proper appearance? I like this reading a lot. I have this idea of a moral compass that I judge myself on, and a lot of that comes from the way I was raised, the way I was brought up, comes from my grandparents, comes from my parents. But I also have this sort of moral compass in me that goes back to one of the happiest times in my life, when I was living in the mountains and I was a ski bum and I had a good crew of folks around me. I had a good job. I was really in touch with nature, and I hold that Josh as part of my guiding compass, right? Like, I would say, what would CB Josh do? Because I used to live in a little town called Crested Butte, Colorado. What would CB Josh do? Back then, I was so connected with nature that we used nature as a escape to get away from the stresses of life. We would work at the restaurant and then go play in the woods, go play in nature, go hike a mountain, go fish, go rafting, go climb, go take photos out in the fields. We would just go play in nature. It was like summer camp. Nowadays, when I think about media and technology and the disconnection that I need, I remind myself of what would CB Josh do? How would past me want to disconnect and live that lifestyle? The reading also talks about kings and peasants, people in our lives that we look up to and think, I can't be like him, he is in a different class, both positive and negative. And there are people in my life as well that are in an upper class, so to speak, that I don't find a lot of commonality with. It's hard for me to understand their desire to work and earn money. It's hard for me to connect sometimes to those people. I've always considered myself more of the blue collar type, more of the working class. And I know it takes everyone to succeed, but it's a good reading to try to accept everyone. But I didn't really feel like I belonged in a place until I went into a meeting and developed a home group and developed a fellowship. And I found in my men's group a place that strips everybody of their titles, of their ranks, and allows everybody to just be themselves, and we connect on a level that is unique. Never experienced a type of fellowship like I do in my meetings. And that's what this reading here really speaks to me about, is just connecting to fellow humans. That was a good one. All right, let's talk hockey. This last weekend was a big weekend for Minnesota, the high school hockey tournament. And man, it was a banger. I watched just about every single minute of it and was rooting for everyone. I was rooting for the Green Wave, who ended up winning single A. I was rooting for the Spuds, who ended up winning the double A. I was also rooting for the Ponies, who took second place in the double A. Neither team in that double A matchup had made it to, or had won the championship. Uh, I know they said that the Spuds had been there 8 times and never won. So, ninth time is a charm. There was some amazing goals. The goaltending was phenomenal on all sides. It was just an incredible thing to see. Those high school hockey players, the talent was just out of this world. The Rogers goalie, I want to meet him and shake his hand because he was one of the all stars, I thought. Just amazing. So much fun. It's like second Christmas here in Minnesota, and it's for 4 days. So, congrats to everybody. Thanks for providing such a great show. The TV coverage was awesome. I've been in person a couple times before. This year I stayed home and watched it, but super exciting. Great to watch it. I watched all that hockey this weekend and then went off to play my own game Sunday night. Was trying to channel a little bit of that high school energy, some of those amazing saves. Thought maybe I could hold my own, channel a little Spuds magic. We played the ninth place team. My team is currently in 21st. Um, it's been a difficult season, and I was hoping just to keep up with the ninth place team, and we sure did for a while. It was a battle back and forth. We ended up after the first period with us leading 1-0. The second period, the scoring started, and they would score a goal, we would score a goal, they would score a goal, we would score a goal, back and forth. That trend continued into the third period. There was only one moment where we weren't tied or winning, and with a minute 30 seconds left in the game, we were down by one, and my team tied it up, sent it into overtime. Overtime was a battle as well. Couple shots back and forth. I made a couple good left leg extension pad saves. But with 13 seconds left in the game, they had a breakaway and they scored on me. And it was pretty defeating. It's hard to keep losing. And I talked to my dad about it. He said something about how losing has taught him more than anything. And I tried to think about that and keep a positive attitude about that. Losing gains character or makes you tougher or makes you more resilient or something like that. And I'm trying to focus on that, but it sucks. It's frustrating. It makes me doubt myself and it makes me doubt if I'm at the right level. Maybe I should go down a level so I can feel a little bit better about the competition against me and the skill of the players around me. I don't know. I talked to my other goalie buddy in my Tuesday night league, and he suggested I go up a level because he thinks that the caliber of the players around me is going to be different. They would play their positions differently or something to that effect. And I don't know. I don't know. I'm kind of wearing myself out a little bit lately playing 2 games a week, but I love it. I love it. When I have a good time, I have a good time, but man, losing so many games in a row sucks. It's hard to keep beating up my body and not win in the process. So, I don't know. We'll see. Just went out for lunch with some of my coworkers. Got some really bomb ramen at this place called Eat Street Connection down on Eat Street. And if you've never been there, you need to go there and get the classic. I've been there a handful of times and I keep getting the same thing because I can't steer away. I can't try something new. I'm so in love with the classic dish. It's like some pork belly and ramen and spiciness added to it. It's so good, so good. My coworker got the one of the rice bowls, steak rice bowl with some curry, and man, it was delicious. I had a little bite of it. Man, it was so good. Creatures of habit, right? We tend to do the same things over and over, and for me, it's that same ramen bowl. I know how good it is, and I know what to expect, and it's gonna be hard for me to veer away from it, or even try a different place in that location. That setup is like a bunch of little like food carts in an indoor area. There's like 5 different little restaurants there. You can kind of go up and place your order and grab a little buzzer and it'll buzz when it's ready. But today we sat outside in the sunshine and we talked about baseball and talked about how beautiful the weather was and just really, really enjoyed ourselves. So, Eat Street Connection. The place I went is called Staff Meeting. So good. Well, I've mentioned the weather a couple times now. It is currently 60 degrees outside and beautiful. Sun is out. High of 64 today. Fishing is kind of in off season right now. I did see a couple folks still out on the lake this weekend, and it made me nervous looking at them. I'm sure there's enough ice out there, but man, I would not trust it right now. But maybe I should. I don't know. If I went out there and I drilled a hole and there was still like, what, 7 inches, 6, 7 inches, I'd probably trust that, right? I don't know. I don't know. It seems a little slushy and soft for my taste, though. But there was a guy out there in the middle of the lake, no hut, No pop up, no anything, just sitting there. And I looked out and I was a little envious because it was a beautiful, sunshiny day. And I thought, man, I bet that guy's having a great time right there, just right in the middle of that lake, in the middle of nature, getting a whole lot of sunshine. I bet it was beautiful. Let's talk about container houses for a minute. I said last episode I wanted to talk about container houses, and it's time to start. I've had this idea for a few years now about buying a plot of land and putting a couple container houses on it, building them out. I've watched a bunch of YouTube videos and done a bunch of research on proper ways to do it, and it's something I'm very passionate about. I've got all sorts of ideas in my head about placing container homes on different locations and living an off grid, sustainable lifestyle. I like to get onto Zillow and search for property in my neighborhood. Well, a close neighborhood within about 2 or 3 hour drive of where I currently live. I like to get on Zillow and dream about these properties and look at some of them and think about where I would put a container or put a tiny home or something like that on it. I've got a million ideas. I sometimes I can waste hours up there just thinking about it and looking at the maps and looking at the plot lines and looking at the water features there and the tree breaks and seeing where I could kind of squeeze a little container in and think about which side is south facing and which is going to get the best sunshine and, you know, what side's going to have a great sunset and building big windows so you can sit there and watch the sunset properly. I've got lots of ideas for gardens and living roofs and solar and water, and I've gone so far as to create a little business plan. Um, Tried to pitch it to a few different folks. Unfortunately, it hasn't gotten a lot of traction yet, but I don't know if I'm not pitching it to the right people or if I just haven't found the right opportunity, if I haven't tried hard enough. Maybe just the time isn't right. Maybe it'll happen when it needs to happen, and then it'll be wonderful. I was trying to reach out to some people who were doing some alternative type farming, thinking that they could have an easy, quick solution for a container home on the property that they're trying to start these farms on. I have ideas about, having a container for an office space, having a container for housing for employees. Um, could all be contained on one single piece of property. I think Minnesota is going to start booming here in the next couple of years with all these alternative farms coming into town. So I think a good alternative to, you know, sticks or bricks would be container home. I've got these ideas in my head about buying like 40 acres, 10 acres, 5 acres, putting a couple containers on, one for me, one for the kids, one in the middle for like a little meeting place where we can have a kitchen, little meeting area, little commons area. But then we each have our own separate container homes that we can retire to. A little privacy, a little individuality. I've ran the numbers and it's for like a VRBO style or an Airbnb style container home, it's very appealing, very rewarding for the return based on the initial investment. It is a little bit of an alternative idea. I think that is where the traction is hard to get. But we'll make it happen one of these days, even if it's just me in the middle of nowhere living in a container home. I have a feeling it'll happen. And once it does, who knows? We'll videotape the construction of it. We'll put it on this podcast. We'll see what happens. But I'm trying to visualize it and manifest it or whatever and throw it out to the universe to make it happen. I can see it so clearly in my head. And in my Zillow wanderings, I've seen it in visions. I've visited a couple different commune style places, and the idea is nice, but I need one for my own. I need with my people, surrounded by people of my choosing. Started writing this WordPress blog called The Church of Skating, thinking that I could have a little place to start writing and express some of my feelings and maybe gain some traction, but it's hard to commit to writing down my thoughts all the time. There's just a lot of distractions and a lot of other things vying for my time. It's hard to kind of put into words what my vision is, but I see a place where everybody can be free to be themselves and grow a bunch of food for ourselves and raise some goats. Goats are a big thing that I want to get into one of these days. I'd love to make my own goat cheese and make my own goat soap. Love to raise some goats. I'd love to be more self-sustainable, collect rainwater, solar power, outhouses, septic systems, something like that. I'd love to be off grid as much as possible, reconnect to nature. That's a big thing that I'm feeling as I get older. I need to get more connected with nature like I used to be 20 years ago. I say this from a building in the middle of the city, but I feel that tug to get away from it and to reconnect. Maybe you do too. I feel like a lot of us get caught up in this lifestyle of Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Snapchat, social media garbage that we've forgotten the face of nature. We've forgotten how wonderful it is to go hiking and have the destination be a campground a few miles away for the night and carry all our things on our back, carry our food and our water with us and sleep out in the woods, sleep out next to a lake, walk in the water, hike through a stream, connect to nature. I feel like a lot of us are missing that. And I watch those alone shows about the people who live alone in the wilderness and they build their own shelters and they catch their own food. And there's a big part of me that's envious of that lifestyle. I don't know how well I could do on that show. I don't know how I could be alone for that long. There's part of me that thinks it would be great, but there's also a part of me that knows I need connection with other people and my kids to survive. Having no food to start off is a daunting thing to think about. But I do see some of those people who are fishermen or fisher people thrive and survive. Yeah, I don't know. It'd be interesting to try out. I've watched a lot of that Dick Prenke PBS show where he goes to Alaska and lives alone for 30 years or something and builds his own log cabin with his hands and crafts his own tools, and so much of his life is just dictated by nature and by the seasons and by necessity. It's not achieving, it's not being better than anybody else. It's not making the most money or climbing the ladder the fastest. It's really being in touch and in tune with nature. And there's a big part of me that needs to do that again. I would love to build my own house out in the middle of the woods. And I've researched how to build log cabins, and of course the technology nowadays, they make some really cool like chainsaw adaptation devices that will take logs and cut them into planks with little types of like a little connection, like a fitting you can put on it, and you can like plane the chainsaw and make planks out of it, and that would be so great. Maybe one of these days we can make that happen. So until then, I'm gonna keep dreaming. I'm gonna keep reading, and I'm gonna keep looking for property. There's some things in the works in the next few months that might free up some money, maybe allow me the ability to do that. I don't know. I get so sick and tired of having everything in life be dependent by how much money you have in the bank or how much credit you have available to you at the moment. I would rather be judged on how useful my hands are and how creative I am at building things, how many fish I can catch, and the berries that we gather. That's the kind of stuff that I want to gear towards. And maybe that sounds a little hippie, but I just need to connect back with nature. That's the goal. And I can think of, some community that would want to do it as well. I mean, I have to feel that there's people out there who share that desire and want to connect with nature again. And even if it's for, a couple weekends out of the year, why can't we all get together to build a retreat or a resort or some sort of escape, a destination with your own tiny house or your own container home on it? You can rent it out when you're not there. Let's buy 40 acres together and plop 10 houses down, and let's make them self-sustainable, and let's teach others how to do it. Let's have seminars, let's have camps, let's have gatherings, let's have a concert there. Let's have a festival, let's have weekend retreats. Let's teach each other how to survive. Let's reconnect with nature. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let me know what your thoughts are about these crazy, wonderful, beautiful ideas. This podcast is going to be available on some streaming platforms, but I'll also have it in YouTube so you can watch the video if you like. It's Cedar Lake Fishing Club. Thank you for being here. Much love. We'll be back soon. Peace.